I've done a few things with Henry, and I usually walk here from where I live. So I was walking along today, thinking about this conference, happy conference, and what happens to me, and it's happened before, when I come towards this building, I don't think about all the good things, I think about all the bad things. I think about my career, I think of the times when I was bullied, the times when I was intimidated, the times when I was humiliated, the times when I was fired, and I come in, I walk in the door feeling really gloomy, thinking about all those awful experiences which every single person in this room has gone through. And I come out of this conference at the end because I suddenly feel a different energy, and you realize that it doesn't have to be like that. It really doesn't have to be like that. But so many people live in toxic workplaces and toxic environments. I spent half my life trying to shore people up and also helping people leave. You know, we haven't talked about that, but I think there's a great thing if you can actually give people the courage to say, I deserve more than this. Because if you get bullied and mistreated, you end up believing the bullshit. You think, that's all I'm good for. I'm not worthy of anything more. I'll just have to put up with it. And it's a horrible experience. So anyway, that's one thing. The second thing I want to talk about is that in Australia, I used to be on the ABC radio, which is the BBC equivalent, but mostly totally underfunded. And I was the kind of workplace guy. So when mass layoffs or something awful happened in the workplace, I'd be hauled on to the radio. And I used to do talk-ins where people would ask questions. And I was having a good time talking about a great workplace. And this guy came on. And if you're doing talkback on the radio, there's a kind of blooding in process. And the blooding in process is they give you some total lunatic. And you have to deal with that live on air, going out all over Australia. And it's a kind of testing. And if you can deal with that, you kind of got a bond between you and the people in the box. So anyway, this guy comes on. And he starts off and says, I'm a business owner, I employ 150 people. So excellent, good. And he said, I have never heard such drivel in all my life. I think you just live in cloud cuckoo land. What kind of planet did you get off to come here and talk to us? I run an organization. I know about running people. I know what people are like. You can't trust them an inch. If I don't keep my eye on everybody within an inch of their life, everything will just go. You don't know what you're talking about. So I let him ramble on a bit. And then I said to him, can you just consider one thing for me? Yes, what? And I said, just imagine what it's like to get up in the morning and go and work for you. And then I did this, which means in the box means cut him. So you never got right on the fly. So he just disappeared. I went, yes. Because that's true. We never think about the other side of things. What is it like to actually work? Be led by you, to be managed by you, to be in your team. And if you can get that kind of self-consciousness for a second, you're in the way to moving towards a more compassionate and kind workplace. Now, I'm going to give you two suggestions today, which you may think I'm mad. And I don't care if you think I'm mad, but tell me if you do. I'm writing this book on organizational learning because I think learning organizations are really important. And I think if you want my opinion, we've gone far too far focusing on individuals, idolizing talent, seeing everything as your job, your KPIs, your bonus, and not about the community, about the team, about the group. And we used to, in the 1990s, be focused on learning organizations, and it dropped off a cliff in 2000, completely dropped off a cliff, largely because of IT and the ability to personalize, individualize. We kind of got drunk on the idea that just for you, just now, you're a star. And we forgot about the organization. And I believe that if we can put back the notion of a learning organization, we can do a huge amount more than we do at the moment, and we can give people a much better working life as well. So this model, this little model I built, and what I believe is that, I'm not going to go into it in massive detail because we haven't got time, but that notion of an organizational brain, I think that if we see people in an organization as neurons, just as we have neurons in our brain, and we know that out of the 80 billion neurons does not make us smart. What makes us smart is the connections between neurons. And I think that if we can connect people in organizations, we get something that is greater than the sum of the parts. So it's really important. And when that happens, and I've got some examples from neuroscience and from psychology at the end, if we have time to deal with that. But I think you've got to build an organizational brain. And that's about connecting people, connecting ideas, and building the right spaces for people to communicate. And interestingly, Zoom, who would have thought Zoom, when they were trying to lure people back into their offices, Zoom wanted people back in the offices. What Zoom said was, rather than say, on Monday you'll be back or you're fired, they said, let's gut our offices and make them places people want to come to. And they made them places they want to come to connect. So there are all sorts of brainstorming, learning spaces, communal spaces, and they got rid of all the desks in rows and corrals and laptops in rows, which you can do anywhere. You don't have to travel miles to an office. So, and I think that we need spaces online and spaces physically that help connect people and connect ideas. So that's park that for a second, and then we're going to look at this. As I was researching this book, and I talked to lots of people, lots of organizations, what I found was that a kind of whole load of ideas and principles kept popping in my head. So I wrote these 7 down. I may be wrong, but I just like to share them very quickly. The first is that a culture can be, everyone talks about culture as if it's all universally good. Culture can be bad and it can be good. And if you saw in that last model, when the external environment starts to impact on organizations, culture needs to change. And we need to accept the fact that we're building culture. It's not a thing, it's something, a process that we build. So culture can actually hold people back. I also believe that we somehow got processes that were designed to help people, and then they imprison people. We have to recognize that if you're going to do anything in an organization, look at the processes and change them. Have the courage to change processes, because bad processes kill innovation and agility. And more, the more organizations I talk to, bad behavior is toxic. And what I mean by that is it's not everyone is okay, but apart from her, and she's kind of shouty and a bit not, but she brings in the bacon, or she's really important in this organization. I don't think that's acceptable at all. I think you've got to kick out bad behaviors, full stop, no exceptions. And if that bad behavior is manifested by the CEO, you give that person a chance to change. And if not, you leave or they leave the organization. Bad behavior destroys people, destroys their aspirations, and destroys their integrity, destroys the effort that they would be willing to make. We talked a little about discretionary effort. The only effort you can't mandate. You give of that or you don't give of that. No one can make you do it. And discretionary effort, in my experience, is the differentiator between good organizations and amazing organizations. So when you do stuff that you want to do, you go that extra mile. When we work together, everyone benefits. It's great working with people, and yet we put people in isolated boxes and give them their individual KPIs, and we kind of mitigate against cooperation. And when we learn together, something special happens in an organization. That's where you begin to get something that you can call a learning organization. And what I believe is that if you can't ask for help, you're in a really bad place. If you can't admit you don't know something, if you're scared to ever admit something went wrong, therefore you deflect it onto someone else, you shift the blame. If you're not even willing to offer help when there's someone struggling because that detracts from my performance, I don't want to be associated with weakness, then we're in really big trouble in organizations. So all of those things that I'm talking about, the opposite of those, asking for help, admitting mistakes, solving problems cooperatively, they're the essence of getting learning, moving around an organization. And what I believe is that when you do that, you accelerate transformation and you build resilience individually and collectively. And that is, I think there's a link between that and happiness at work. And I'm more and more convinced that if you're miserable at work, you're never going to transform. You're never going to do amazing things. You're never going to feel fulfilled and achieved. So happiness isn't a kind of, that's a nice thing to have, isn't it? It's fundamental to building resilience in individuals and in organizations. So I think it's really, really important. And that's what gets me out of bed in the morning, the thought that there are many, many organizations, many, many people who understand this, but we've got a long way to go to make that widespread. And this is something else that I believe, and it sounds slightly ridiculous, but it's very true. Knowing precedes knowledge. Knowledge is when knowing is packaged, put into boxes. And the problem is that knowing, that process of knowing is a messy, dirty, fantastic process. You've got to be in the sight of knowing. And so many organizations kind of cut a line. We do the knowing, you do the knowledge. You know, once we worked it out, we give it to you in a package. And the learning and development people in organizations are often the most guilty. They just deal with packaged, explicit knowledge and say, digest that. Once you digest it, you will be transformed. Of course, you're not transformed. In fact, you probably can't remember 3/4 of the things you were supposed to transform or absorb. Whereas if you're in the knowing, if knowing is part of what makes you get up in the morning and go to work, that's exciting. Because we're all in that process of knowing. And there's so much transformation, so much insecurity and insubstantiality at the moment out there. Knowing is really important. And we need to embrace knowing and make sure, because everyone can contribute that. I was talking earlier to someone saying, diversity is important, Nigel. I said, it's absolutely fundamental. Because if you just live in an echo chamber, you just reinforce all the worst things. So, question 1. So what evidence do we have that happy workplaces lead to more organizational resilience and more individual as well as corporate learning? That's the question, first question. So just take 5 minutes on, so it's the link between happiness and resilience, which no one ever talks about, but I think it's actually quite important. I think there's something there. You might come thundering back at me and say, you do not know what you're talking about. And I always reserve the right to agree with you, because I don't know what I'm talking about. In the front of my book, it says, I wrote this book, not because I know anything, but because I wanted to find out what I know. And that's the reason. So anyway, what evidence do we have that happy workplaces lead to organizational resilience and learning? Go. I've got a question. Are they back yet?
1 minute.
Okay. All right. Someone want to make a point? Anyone want to make a point while in that minute? Or they're coming back? Has anyone got a question or a point? We've got some question online. Does anyone just talk about what you talked about? Yeah, go for it.
I think the biggest piece of evidence was the pandemic, and
yes.
Places with happy workplaces were just way better.
100%. The opening of my book are two companies in Australia. One went through the pandemic like a dream, and really it strengthened the culture. The other company just fell apart. And it was all to do with that, about empowerment. People were able to take decisions, just get stuff done, whereas the other company just sat waiting to be told, and it was a complete disaster. So yes, I think that's 100% correct, 100%. Because that, and in some ways, the pandemic is a big example of all sorts of small examples which are all going to confront as we go forward. And if you just wait for someone to tell you what to do, it's catastrophic. And when you have that, it implies, just as you were saying to him, that the leader is all-knowing. That person will come like on a white horse and solve all your problems. It's rubbish. You know, it's just that notion of leadership is completely obsolete now. Yeah.
I don't actually think companies will survive in the future.
I don't think so.
Without this kind of culture. And
completely agree. I think we have God on our side in all of this. I really do. That yes, I think those companies will wither on the vine, because if you can't draw on the complexity and diversity of the workforce, it's like you're cutting off half, 3/4, 90% of your brain. So it's that a brain, an organizational brain, draws on every connection. You can't just isolate genius and say the 5 top paid people in this organization will come to our rescue, because they won't. Yeah.
Can a team be happy in a unhappy workplace?
That is a good question. Say it again.
Asked, can a team be happy in a broadly unhappy workplace?
Yes.
Okay.
Is my answer. But Belinda Grattan wrote a book and called them hotspots. There are hotspots in organizations which are totally different from the rest of the organization. And the smart person sees that and then takes the good out and rolls that out. The toxic leader destroys that because it doesn't fit. But yes, it can happen, and that is all to do with leadership, cooperation, and working as a team. It should be a model, but it's often seen as a threat, and that is when it's really bad. But yes, it can happen. It absolutely can happen.
Okay, Nigel,
Yes.
a question from Jackie.
So, honestly, so much of what you said resonated. I'm slightly dying about my lovely little team, who I do love dearly, most of them. Yeah, no, I am going to take on board some of the stuff that Karen said. I'm gonna work on that. But so I've listed all of you. I need to know that. I think a few of us want to know the name of your book.
Yes.
Because I think we'll be online buying that. But so much of it resonated, but the one thing that did resonate, and it's possibly because we're there now, so we've developed a strategy, we've done a lot of consultation, we've updated our values, we've done some work around how we will walk those, what that means to us, all of that sort of stuff. We've done some great stuff, but we're the strategic plan's been signed off. We've developed a really detailed business plan, which just killed us all, and as a result of that, work was bottom up as well as top down. It kind of met in the middle. So we're now at the stage of just finessing, I suppose, the team plans. And we were thinking about going on to individual plans, but you said something and I only caught it. So I maybe misheard it, but it was about the idea of cooperation. When you were talking about cooperation benefits is all and you were describing that we all have individual KPIs and we have individual work plans. Well, that's I'm at the cusp of doing that now. So we're finalising the team plans. Do I stop there then? Do I not go for individual? Because we were moving towards individual team plans with their own key KPIs. They've all got a one-page profile. It was person-centred around them, but I wonder whether maybe I just stop at a team plan, because they're all contributing to the team plan and they should be seeing how they contribute to the strategy and really the vision and the outcomes that we want to achieve. So that was just a thought. I'm not work shy. I'm not trying to get out of doing something.
No, you're not. 100%. Jack, you know, the first thing I'd say is that I believe that we work in context. We don't work vanilla. And therefore, to say, oh, this is what you should do without any idea of the nature of the organization, it's a big mistake. And I don't want anyone to go there. It's one of my bugbears with leadership is that we say, oh, here's our leadership model. And it's really good. If you do this, this, and this, everything's sorted out. No account whatsoever of the context. So context is everything. You have to think of context. But what I would say is, rather like the values, if you've got values in an organization, you don't stop there. You take it down and down through the organization. So you end up with individuals and teams saying, this is what the values mean for me and how I will behave in this context that I work. Similarly, there's your team. You've got your team objectives. I would say, ask everyone individually. So what am I going to contribute towards the team's outcomes and achievements? Perfect. So you get every single individual target linked directly to what the team tries to achieve, because otherwise you end up with, well, I'm going to do this. I've got the team, I want to get this sorted out. So if people think in that way, it's really powerful. That's what I would suggest to you.
Super, thank you.
One more.
What's your book, Nigel? What's your book?
It's called Transforming Organizations: The Power of Corporate Learning. Power of Corporate Learning, call it. It'll be out in June or July. It's being edited with the editors at the moment. It's on its way, and I promise you, Henry, you will know all about it. You can put it out in your network and hopefully help me promote it, because it's a bloody nightmare trying to promote a book, as anyone who's ever done that will know. Right.
So, just following on a little bit from that, I think what's interesting about, you've got this thing called theory of constraints, where you can optimize, for a team can optimize, and each team in an organization can optimize, but overall it's suboptimal. So the example would be sort of salespeople motivated by commission or whatever it is, want to sell. So they sell loads of stuff, but the delivery people can't necessarily deliver all the stuff that's being sold, or there's short circuit. delivery people would all do a really good job and do it all, and not deliver as many things, but do a better job. So I think the problem that we find, I think other people probably find as well, is that it's really difficult for people to be suboptimal within their team. So basically, you'd say to salespeople,
Yes.
we don't want you to sell everything. Don't show, because that actually we can't deliver it. Actually, it'll be worse in the long run. And getting people to think and cooperate, even as a team, is you need this overall goal, this overall thing, we want to deliver optimally through this organization. I think that's where we see a lot of issues, and it comes back to your communication and how you communicate between them and how you align those different groups within a team.
It also comes into systems thinking. You've got to think system, think big system, not small system. So one organization that I worked with where that was exactly the issue. The sales team were really good at selling and they just oversold and it couldn't be delivered. And so that they changed the mission from selling as much as you can to trigger your commission to giving every customer a great experience. And that was right across the organization, giving every customer a great experience. And what the sales team realized is they could not give every customer because they were just forcing people to buy when they weren't ready, when it wasn't the appropriate product, and giving customers a terrible experience, which meant that the support people then had a terrible experience because they were trying to have to unpick the pieces. And the production people were having a terrible experience because they couldn't deliver. So I think if you can say, what are we trying to do as an organization? And if you think big, we want every customer to have a great experience. That then means every team can go and say, for us, what that means. And then it goes right down to, for me, that means. And then you get a joined up organization where you don't do one lot pushing against the other. And it's true. How many organizations? My job is recruitment. I'll get that person in. I'll promise Chris anything he wants. Yeah, you want 5 weeks holiday? No problem, Chris. We'll get you to sign on this dotted line. Chris comes in, day 2. What did I agree to? This is absolutely awful. It's nothing what I said. So then the onboarding team have a miserable time trying to persuade Chris to stay. And then when Chris gets into the job, the team is resentful. Why I didn't come here? And so the whole thing just cascades from someone having the wrong objectives, which is I've got to fill that job as quickly as possible. I'll give it to Chris. I don't care what lies I have to tell in order to get him to sign on the dotted line. So you have non-systems thinking and you have these knock-on effects, which are catastrophic, really catastrophic. So yes, you're 100% right. But you can solve it by getting, there are 2 words that I'm obsessed with. The first one is field work. We do not do enough field work. Field work means you go and talk to people about what it's really like to be them and what stops them doing great work. And they will tell you, but most people never, ever ask. So great question. What stops you doing great work? I've never been in a group where they didn't say, well, if that bit was different, that. And mostly they're little things. Sometimes they're big. The second thing is practice. How do I improve my practice? So if you're working inside as a consultant or in OD, how do I become better at my job? And what new models, what new ideas do I have to embrace? It's like, my physio, who I'm kind of slowly building his pension for him, my physio, that every week, not every week, I don't see him every week practically, whenever I see him, he's always got some new idea because he's got a group of physios who meet on a 2 weekly basis and they share good ideas. He said, I've got this great idea. I used to say that. I don't believe that anymore. I think we should. Practice is obsessive. He's really obsessive about practice. Can you hear? Wind up. Okay. Coming. Sorry. Thank you, Henry. I've got another 6 minutes. 6 minutes, Henry. Right. Can we go? I'll go back a bit.
Okay.
I just want to share 2 things. This is from a neuroscientist, Hannah Critchlow. I love Hannah. She's at Cambridge neuroscientist. And this book, Joined Up Thinking, what she proves is that when we work together in flow, our brain waves align. So in other words, when 4 people are in alignment, you get more than 4 brains. So there is such a thing as collective intelligence. And so many organizations, no one has ever experienced that in the workplace because they've never been allowed to. It's all about individual performance. So that is really important. Read her book. It's a very simple book, but it's a very powerful message. And it's not designed for organizations, but it's absolutely crucial that we can build collective intelligence, which gives us that edge on everyone else. And the second one is this. This is Robin Dunbar, the Dunbar numbers. Anyone ever heard of the Dunbar number? Yes, what is the Dunbar number? 122, actually. It doesn't really matter. But what Robin Dunbar found, that by scaling up from apes' brains, we find the optimum group that human beings can work productively with. And he's got these different grades. Family is 5 up to 120, which is the collective group, where you can know everyone, not very as well as you know your family, but you can work together productively. Above that, it starts to fall apart. And I was talking to the former head of creativity at Electronic Arts, the games company, and I mentioned Dunbar. Oh, the Dunbar number. Oh yeah, we built the whole company around that. And I said, what? And he said, yeah, we realized we'd never get creativity if we have massive teams. So he said, whenever we get close to 200, we split. So we then put them into separate organizations. So that's a company of 12,000 people, all in groups of smaller than 200, in order to remain in contact with each other, in order to remain creative. And then they have the agents who move between the teams, finding out the new ideas. So the whole structure of the organization is based around Robin Dunbar, who probably doesn't even know that. He's at Oxford, by the way. But what he's saying is that if you want to thrive, you need good relationships at work. You need to feel challenged, but not fearful. In a fair system are key components of thriving. Everyone feels seen and heard. Everyone has a sense of autonomy. And there's a wonderful theory called self-determination theory, which is a theory of motivation, which anyone's ever heard. It's basically saying you need autonomy, you need competence. Third element of self-determination theory, community. You can't be motivated without being in a strong community. It's really important. So what I'm saying is that you can't just get involved in the action. You've got to be involved in the process and the culture. You've got to work on the process and the culture in order to deliver the results of the action that you choose. And mostly we never do that. We just ignore process and culture, and they're really important. So I've got 3 minutes just on trust. If it's so important, we talked about, I don't know who I spoke to, just saying trust is the essence of creating great workplaces. So it's easy to lose trust. And you can think of, all of you think of examples in your life when you felt betrayed, your trust evaporated in a company, in a person, in an organization, in a product, whatever it might be. So how do you build trust? Have you got any tips for building trust? Because that's really important. Anyone? Just have a chat yourself in your pairs, and just we'll throw out a few ideas, and I'll finish on a few ideas. I don't want to take my 40 minutes. I'm not going to say it again. Be embarrassed.
And was there any question?
What?
Do you want to ask them if they've got any questions?
Yeah, do you have any questions, Henry? We're waiting for it. We're expecting, we're thinking, relying on you. Relying on you.
Ask a question of the audience first.
We've done it.
Does anyone else have another question?
Anyone got any?
Yeah, but we didn't get to hear that question.
All right, well, I'll come back in a minute. Go on, you ask your question, then we'll come back.
The tension between wanting to encourage this kind of interaction that means you're so much more than the sum of the parts, with every meeting being massive, or you know, there's this struggle we sense as an organization in trying to get stuff done, but involving enough people to get that multiplying effect.
Back to self-determination theory, autonomy, number one. So that therefore one of the problems with, like in the BBC, no meeting had less than about 30 people, because there were 10 who were useful and 20 were there just in case anyone said anything that they shouldn't, or because anyone tried to get one over them. So there were loads of people there just because they didn't trust the 10 people in the room. So if you trust, you'll say, those 3 people can make all those decisions. Henry built his website by saying to the web developer, just build it, deliver it. I don't want to see it until it's launched. That's trust. So he didn't have the whole staff going through frame by frame of the new website, because they trusted people. So that's the essence of being effective, is not to tell everyone everything and consult on everything. And that's kind of academia, and it's a disaster always, because nothing ever gets done. It's about trust and autonomy, saying, Chris, I know you can do that. You've got 3 people, just go away and do it. We trust that you're not going to screw up. And that actually puts more pressure on Chris to do a great job than if you, right, Chris, you know, first idea, put that to the group, and then second idea, well, then we're nearly at launch, put that to them. It's just a disaster, over consultation. So have you got a question, Henry?
Okay, there's a question from Grace. There's a question from Grace. Grace, are you there?
I am there.
Okay.
Fantastic. We're all
Right,
seeking
the
for grace in many
I
ways.
think you're awesome. Yeah, because you invented iPlayer. I love iPlayer. Right. So, we're just really happy in this house. Anyway, has anyone ever resisted working with the 7 points you mentioned earlier? And also, I want your book.
Right. Has anyone ever resisted? Yeah, I would say every single one of those comes out of challenge and out of dispute. So yes, I would say every single one of those things is not obvious. To me, it's blindingly obvious. But to many people, there's the but. Like Chris, you know, that but, that would mean then, therefore, and a lot of that is all about not being quick at decision making, putting overlays of, you know, people have to behave well, you know, how the hell do I get stuff done if I have to behave well? So these things are therefore all debates and challenges. And when I work with teams, I don't give them those and say, right, there they are. I say, right, take one and debate it. Get it out there in your organization, see what people say. It's really important. So yes, Grace, they are all challenged. Always. Thank you.
Okay, let's have a question from Rachel.
Rachel's question, Henry.
Yeah.
I think Rachel's question was a little bit about interested in finding out what knowing before knowledge means. The reason that resonated with me as well.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Jill. Thank you very much indeed, Jack. That's great. Right. Let me just read this quote, and then I think that will help answer it. It's from a favourite academic of mine called David Nicolini, who's an academic. So this is academic speak. Practice talking reiterates that beyond grand constructions like discourses, paradigms, or logics, there is a daily reality of local tactics, pockets of resistance, dialects, collusions, and contradictions. So let me repeat that. A daily reality of local tactics, pockets of resistance, dialects, collusions, and contradictions. Now, that's messy. I think we need to be in the mess, not at the paradigms when it's all sorted out. That's the difference between knowing and knowledge. Knowledge is grand constructions. It's all packaged, it's all explicit, we all know everything. The reality of life in an organization is in the mess. The dialects, the tactics, the pockets of resistance, the collusions, and the contradictions. We can not be afraid of embracing that. And the problem is in many organizations, a lot of people in HR or learning are terrified getting involved in the mess of organizations. But that's how knowledge is created. So that is knowing. That's what knowing is, Jack. Knowing is being in that soup of trying to understand before we end up with something more formal that we can call knowledge. And knowing is really important. And if you feel you're at the site of knowing, you just feel so much more energized than when you get stuff handed. That iPlayer meeting was all about knowing. No one knew how it was going to end. It was a big mess. We brought in the thing that we did, which was very naughty. We made movies about aging gamers, people who stole BBC stuff and put it on CDs and distributed amongst their friends. About 5 different groups. And everyone's going, oh, this is terrible. Who are these people? And we opened the doors and they all came in and they sat at the table. And at my table, there's some guy who'd gone through every episode of Doctor Who and he put on a CD-ROM his 10 favourite episodes. And the guy said, what? Well, you just can't do that. That's our copyright material. And the guy just looked at him and said, I spent a week making my friends contribute to paying for the TV license. Grow up, mate. And that was perfect. That was knowing, moving towards knowledge, a realization that we had to do something fundamentally different. But we hadn't dabbled in the knowing. If we'd said to, you know, let's do a theoretical paper, let's bring Deloitte in to give us options, none of that would have happened. None of that would have happened. That's knowing, Jack. That's what knowing is and why it's really important.
Okay, let's go for lunch.
I was going to say, let's
Yeah,
go.
lunch.
For
And after-